Boom, boom. In the tranquil world, the golden torrent surged like a torrential rain towards the towering massive body that stood in the heavens and earth. However, as soon as the torrents entered the ring of golden light, they all shattered without exception. Although the offensive was terrifying, it couldn't even touch the massive body. Hiss. The silence in both camps lasted for a while, before the sound of gasps broke the stillness. No one had expected that Qin Bei's carefully prepared killing move would be blocked so easily by Mu Chen. Earlier, they had all thought this attack would be enough to end the battle, but that young man, Mu Chen, once again showed them what it meant to truly hide one's strength. Phew. In the great Luo Heaven domain, powerful figures like Nine Nether, Mountain-Splitting King, and others all quietly let out a sigh of relief. The Heavenly Vulture Emperor, Spirit Pupil Emperor, and even the Sleeping King all looked at each other with a flash of surprise in their eyes. Clearly, Mu Chen's performance was beyond their expectations. The only one who remained calm was the great Luo domain master on his throne. The light surrounding him flickered slightly, as if he was observing the battle in the sky. While they relaxed, the expressions of the experts in the 100 Battles domain, including the Sword Concealment Elder, grew grim. The smiles from before had disappeared, replaced by serious gazes. The level of difficulty posed by Mu Chen was clearly beyond what they had anticipated. Bang! Bang! The continuous explosions in the sky finally began to thin out. The overwhelming golden Zen ropes began to show signs of weakness, eventually disappearing entirely. The world became truly quiet. Qin Bei stood atop the Arhut Dharma body, his face grim as he stared at the massive golden body in the distance, completely unharmed. Taking a deep breath to suppress his anger and shock, he slowly spoke, as expected of someone personally chosen by the great Luo domain master. Truly impressive. His praise was sincere, not at all perfunctory. At this point, he had completely acknowledged Mu Chen as an equal opponent, no longer daring to underestimate him. Mu Chen also raised his head, offering a faint smile towards Qin Bei. His gaze remained as sharp as ever. Slowly bringing his palms together, he softly said, "It's impolite not to return the favor. Let me see how you handle my next move." Boom. With a roar, the great sun indestructible body slammed his palms together. The golden sun on his forehead grew increasingly brilliant, and then golden liquid light burst forth, flowing along his massive body before gathering at the great Xun'er demon pillar. The pillar, which had been filled with ominous energy, turned radiant with golden light. The golden liquid solidified into crystals, covering the demon pillar. It sparkled as if it were indestructible. Boom. The massive golden body's foot slammed heavily onto the ground, and the figure transformed into a golden rainbow, shooting upwards. In the next instant, it appeared above Qin Bei without hesitation. Holding the great Xun'er demon pillar, which had turned into a golden column, it fell down with dazzling golden light. Boom. The golden light howled through the air, and space itself was shattered, leaving behind dark cracks as if glass was about to break. As Mu Chen swung the demon pillar, his internal spiritual energy surged to its peak. Combined with the single yang force from his forehead, the power reached its zenith. The golden light filled Qin Bei's eyes, and his expression changed drastically. He clenched his teeth and crushed a pill hidden in his mouth, swallowing it down. Boom. A torrent of spiritual energy exploded from within Qin Bei's body. His hands formed seals at lightning speed, and he shouted, "Spiritual mountain protection!" Surging spiritual energy rushed out, forming a massive, ethereal mountain outside his towering supreme Dharma body. At the peak of the mountain, majestic golden palaces stood, exuding an air of mystery. However, the golden demon pillar paid no heed. It continued its brutal descent, crashing onto the colossal mountain with earth-shattering force. Boom. The sky trembled as cracks suddenly spread across the mountain. Brilliant light shot from the fissures, and the mountain crumbled layer by layer. The golden demon pillar, continuing its descent, pressed down with relentless force. Bang! Bang! The enormous mountain exploded one after another, but Qin Bei's defense was incredibly strong. Everyone was nervously watching this scene. Initially, they had thought that, with the shocking battles that had come before, the third fight would feel rather dull. But now, The situation before them told them that, in terms of danger, the third match might actually be the most intense of all. The golden demon pillar continued to slam through the mountains with fierce force, clearly intending to force out and heavily injure the hidden Chen Bei. As the pillar tore through the mountain to its midpoint, the supreme Dharmakaya finally revealed itself. Chen Bei's figure remained standing atop the head of the supreme Dharmakaya, unwavering. "I found you." Mu Chen's eyes were sharp, and with the golden crystal layer of the demon pillar now mostly peeled away, it immediately activated its final surge of power, slamming down toward Chen Bei. At that moment, Chen Bei suddenly looked up, his eyes glowing brighter than ever before. He immediately changed his hand seals, and the golden Zen staff in the hands of his Arhut Dharmakaya shot forward to meet the golden demon pillar in a violent collision. Clang! A burst of golden light exploded from the point of impact. Mu Chen's heart shook, feeling a jolt. This time, it seemed Chen Bei's strength had increased once more. The falling great Xun'er demon pillar was halted, and then the golden Zen staff trembled violently. The golden crystal layer on the demon pillar was shattered into pieces, and the pillar was sent flying. The great sun indestructible body's giant hand reached out to catch it firmly. Mu Chen, however, stared at Chen Bei with a solemn expression. Chen Bei's robes billowed as he sharply lifted his head. His piercing eyes locked onto Mu Chen, and the spiritual energy within his body erupted without restraint. Boom! The shattered spiritual energy mountain transformed into countless glowing points, scattering across the sky, while Chen Bei's escalating, overwhelming spiritual power spread across the heavens and earth, causing a chorus of gasps from the onlookers. This spiritual energy fluctuation. Did Chen Bei break through to the fourth great supreme? His aura is a bit disordered, but he is definitely stronger than before. Did he hide his true strength earlier? This is terrifying. A flood of astonished exclamations filled the air. It seemed they were all caught off guard by Chen Bei's sudden surge in power. His aura is chaotic, and his spiritual power is somewhat wild. This is not the result of a natural breakthrough. He must have taken some kind of pill. The spirit pupil emperor's eyes gleamed with sharp light as he immediately saw through Chen Bei's condition. He spoke coldly. The heavenly vulture emperor furrowed his brow slightly. The 100 battles domain really would stop at nothing to win. Didn't they realize that such forced breakthroughs would always leave some side effects? In the long run, this would not necessarily be a good thing. In the sky, Mu Chen also let out a light sigh, his brow furrowing as he stared at Chen Bei. This guy was really troublesome. He had even withstood such a move from Mu Chen himself. On top of the Arhut Dharmakaya, Chen Bei's figure slowly ascended into the air. His gaze was sharp as he locked onto Mu Chen and said softly, "You're the first one in all these years to force me to this point with just your second-grade supreme strength. So, as a sign of respect, I will defeat you with my strongest method." As Chen Bei's voice fell, his hands gently came together, and then his palms began to tremble. Blood began seeping from his palms, and in an instant, his hands were drenched in a deep crimson, exuding a faint aura of savagery. When the other powerful figures saw this, startled exclamations spread quickly. "That's the top-tier divine art of great sorrow heaven, blood azure hand. If he uses this technique, his palms will be crippled for a month." Chen Bei is really going all out. Now, Mu Chen is in danger. Amidst the cries of shock, Chen Bei's palms grew even more crimson. A trace of pain flashed across his brow, and waves of intense blood aura began to pour from his palms, turning the sky itself into a blood-red hue. Mu Chen's expression slowly grew more serious. From the blood aura, he could sense immense danger. Is he preparing for a final desperate strike? Mu Chen's brows were tightly furrowed, and a sharp light flashed in his black eyes. Over the years, he had faced countless perilous situations. Mu Chen took a deep breath, his hands slowly lowering. In his right hand, the spiritual energy of purple flame surged quietly, while in his left hand, the invisible thunder spiritual energy began to manifest. At this moment, two distinct types of spiritual energy started to emerge. Behind him, the Supreme Sea flickered into view, its two-colored aura drawing countless astonished gazes. Those with discerning eyes could feel it. The spiritual energy within the Supreme Sea seemed to possess two completely different attributes. This young man, Chen, had actually fused two types of strange powers into his spiritual energy. No wonder he was able to face off against Chen Bei with his second-grade supreme strength. However, even with this, it was doubtful whether he could withstand Chen Bei's final desperate attack. In the sky above, the space where Chen Bei stood had turned a blood-red hue, and even his eyes had become a fiery red. The next moment, his hands, which had been pressed together, slowly parted. In his palm, ghastly scars appeared, forming eerie runes that radiated a terrifying energy. Chen Bei took a deep breath, inhaling the bloody air, then his gaze sharpened. With a sudden, forceful motion, he struck out with both palms. Boom! The blood aura of the heavens and earth rushed towards him, forming a massive shadow of a blood azura behind him. The enormous blood-red palm, carrying a spine-chilling, bloody wave, descended with the weight of a mountain, looming over all. Countless people held their breath at this moment. As the blood wave surged, Chen suddenly raised his head. His palms clenched tightly, his dark eyes flashing with a flicker of purple flame in one and a crackle of thunder in the other. At the same time, a deafening dragon's roar and elephant's bellow reverberated through the sky from the Supreme Sea behind him. The conquest war between the Great Luo Heaven Domain and the 100 Battles Domain ended with a decisive victory for the Great Luo Heaven Domain. The moment the war concluded, all the intelligence about the battle was rapidly disseminated, reaching the ears of the various powers who had been watching the conflict. From a certain perspective, this outcome wasn't too surprising. After all, it was well known that the Great Luo Heaven Domain was stronger than the 100 Battles Domain. Had it not been for the hidden support of Xun'er Palace, the 100 Battles Domain might not have dared challenge the Great Luo Heaven Domain in the first place. However, while the result wasn't unexpected, many powers were shocked by the process. According to the reports, the Great Luo Heaven Domain had been caught off guard in the so-called Duel of Wagers by the 100 Battles Domain, especially when the Spirit Corpse King of the Demon Corpse sect made a decisive move, exploding his life-bound demon corpse to severely wound the Azura King, giving the 100 Battles Domain a win. After that, the Great Luo Heaven Domain fell into a disadvantage, especially since in the final round, Chen Bei from the 100 Battles Domain vastly outclassed the new, unknown commander from the Great Luo Heaven Domain. But just as everyone expected the outcome to be sealed, in the third Duel of Wagers, the seemingly doomed Chen reversed the situation, turning the tide and defeating Chen Bei, who was on the verge of entering the fourth-grade Supreme Realm. No one had anticipated that this young commander, with only the strength of a second-grade Supreme, could pull off such a miraculous comeback. Not only did he avoid defeat, but he also managed to defeat Chen Bei, leaving everyone stunned. This unexpected victory in the Duel of Wagers was what ultimately turned the tide for the Great Luo Heaven Domain, securing their win. It was almost comical, as no one would have thought that a battle for the dignity of the Great Luo Heaven Domain would be decided by a mere commander. Additionally, news of Chen's confrontation with Lu Yan, the young hall master of Xun'er Palace, at the end of the war also spread, sparking some commotion. Of course, most of the noise was centered around Chen being seen as an arrogant newcomer trying to climb the ranks using Lu Yan's fame. After all, compared to someone like Lu Yan, who was already a renowned figure in the Northern Domain, Chen was still lacking in experience, despite his newfound fame from defeating Chen Bei. But no matter how others viewed it, one thing was clear. The name of Chen, once obscure in the Northern Domain, had now spread far and wide. Although they did not know whether this name would be a fleeting moment in the talent-filled Northern Domain, at least for now, he had begun to shine with some light. Whether this rising star could truly make his name resonate throughout the entire Northern Domain in the future would depend on whether he could transform his potential into real power. And clearly, in the upcoming Dragon and Phoenix Sky, everyone would witness his answer, because there, Lu Yan, the young hall master of Xun'er Palace, would certainly not let him off. As news of the war between the Great Luo Heaven Domain and the 100 Battles Domain spread through the Northern Domain, Chen was enjoying the peace after the battle in the Nethers Palace. Though the Nine Nethers Palace was busy handling the influx of numerous cities, thanks to Chief Tangbing's management, Chen and the others had no need to worry about such matters. After the war, everyone in the Nine Nethers Palace could feel their status rising steadily in the Great Luo Heaven domain. The rumors that had once circulated about them completely vanished, and even other royal factions now treated them courteously. Even the Blood Eagle Hall, who had always looked down on them, was actively avoiding them these days, no longer daring to eye them with the same disdain as before. The reason for this change, of course, was their remarkable performance during the war. But more importantly, it was likely due to the scene where the Great Luo Domain Master stepped forward to protect Chen and the Nine Nethers Palace. The Great Luo Domain Master was the sole ruler of the Great Luo Heaven Domain, and her words were absolute orders. Even someone as stubborn as the Blood Eagle King did not dare to be arrogant in front of her. Now, the Great Luo Domain Master had clearly shown special favor to Chen and the Nine Nethers Palace. Just this alone was enough to deter all those dissatisfied with Chen. In the back mountains of the Nine Nethers Palace, Chen sat cross-legged on a peak, his eyes tightly closed. Invisible thunder wrapped around him, and distant, shrill thunderous sounds echoed, almost like a scream. The sound was piercing and carried strange fluctuations. If anyone were present, they would be overwhelmed by the sound's corrupting influence, causing chaos in their minds. This thunderous noise was, naturally, the Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning. At this moment, Chen was still relying on its power to cultivate the Supreme Heart Demon Sutra, which he had obtained deep within the Thunder Demon Abyss. The thunderous screeching continued for an entire hour before Chen finally opened his eyes. He placed a hand over his chest, feeling the increasing intensity of the heart demon power that had penetrated deep into his heart after countless strikes from the Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning. However, to Chen's disappointment, the so-called Heart Demon Seed still hadn't solidified. It seems the Supreme Heart Demon Sutra is indeed not easy to cultivate, Chen muttered with a wry smile. But of course, if it were that easy, the Supreme Heart Demon Sutra wouldn't be so terrifying. He looked down at the Nine Nethers Palace below. Though it was deep into the night, the palace was still bustling with activity. Thanks to the war, the Nine Nethers Palace had gained a wealth of resources. Under the command of Nine Nethers, they had even established a 9 Nether Guards reserve camp with a force of 4,000. Of course, their combat strength was far from comparable to that of the 9 Nether Guards, but they would need proper training. Overall, the Nine Nethers Palace now seemed to be thriving, no longer the lifeless place it had been a year ago. All these changes were brought about by the return of Nine Nethers and the appearance of Chen, and Chen was extremely pleased with the results of his influence. Is that the Netherworld Heart Demon Lightning? While Chen was lost in thoughts about the changes in the Nine Nethers Palace, a surprised, youthful voice suddenly came from behind. Startled, Chen quickly turned around and saw a little girl in a black dress swaying her pale legs on a large rock. She wore a surprised expression on her face. This figure, besides Mandala or the Great Luo Domain Master, could it be anyone else? Upon seeing Mandala, Chen quickly stood up, awkwardly grinning. He had been too casual with her before, so now, trying to act respectful in her presence made him feel embarrassed. "Just treat me like Mandala," Mandala said, her golden eyes glancing at Chen. She rested her chin in her hand and added, "I can tell, even though I'm the Great Luo Domain Master, you don't necessarily feel more respectful. So don't pretend." Chen gave an awkward smile. He did respect the power of the Great Luo Domain Master, but it was impossible for him to feel genuine reverence. Despite Mandala seeing through his thoughts, Chen quickly relaxed and smiled. He was, of course, referring to Mandala stepping in to protect him and his dealings with the Nine Nether. He wasn't an idiot, so he could easily tell that Mandala must have paid quite a hefty price for it. "You've earned battle merits for the Great Luo Heaven Domain. If they were to abandon you in the blink of an eye, it would inevitably dampen the spirits of others," Mandala said casually. Chen scratched his nose. Hearing such words from a top-tier powerhouse at the Earth Supreme level was a bit absurd. After all, with someone as powerful as Mandala, so-called loyalty was really just fear of her. She wasn't concerned that anyone would dare be disloyal. "On top of that, you've helped me. Naturally, I'll repay you," Mandala's next words were far more considerate, which left Chen a little speechless. It seemed that, in her eyes, the favor he had done her was far more important than the one he had done for the great Luo Heaven domain. Here, Mandala suddenly waved her small hand, and a streak of rainbow light shot toward Chen. He caught it in midair, looking down in astonishment to find a crystal-clear jade vial in his palm. Inside the vial was a glowing liquid, and an incredibly powerful spiritual energy emanated from it. This is, Chen looked at Mandala in disbelief. It's 20,000 supreme spiritual liquid. Thanks to your help, we won the 3 duels of wagers with the 100 battles domain. Consider this your reward, Mandala said casually. Chen was a little dizzy from the immense quantity of supreme spiritual liquid. They had painstakingly raided the Thunder Devil sect and only managed to get around 100,000 supreme spiritual liquid, but he hadn't kept a single drop, knowing that the 9 Nether Palace needed it for its expansion. Supreme spiritual liquid was essential for a supreme-level cultivator's training. Having it could greatly accelerate one's cultivation speed, and Chen needed vast amounts to unlock the supreme divine art of the great sun indestructible body. But at the moment, he was financially strapped and had been agonizing over it. So, the sudden gift of 20,000 supreme spiritual liquid was like an unexpected, dizzying blessing. Chen held the jade vial. Though he wanted to refuse in a dramatic fashion, he ultimately shrugged and decisively stored it away, nodding solemnly at Mandala. Thanks. Mandala stood up from the boulder. The night wind blew through, and her knee-length hair fluttered, making the young girl appear incredibly delicate. She glanced at Chen and said, 3 months from now, you will represent the great Luo Heaven domain in the Dragon Phoenix sky. Lu Yin will certainly try to deal with you there, so in these 3 months, I will personally train you. If you don't reach a satisfactory level by then, I'll strip you of the qualifications to participate. Her tone was indifferent, yet her authority left no room for disagreement. After speaking, she turned and floated away, leaving Chen standing there, holding the jade vial, looking slightly dazed. Mandala's promise of training clearly wasn't a casual remark. The next day, when Chen was inspecting the 9 Nether Guards reserve camp at the training grounds, he saw the little girl in a black dress floating toward him. She landed gracefully on a stone lion, her small arms crossed in front of her chest, her golden eyes lightly fixed on him. Greetings, Domain Lord. Mandala's sudden appearance made the senior members of the 9 Nether Palace in the training field hurry to bow. Even 9 Nether herself bent in respectful greeting. Mandala gave a slight nod and then turned her golden eyes toward Chen. Follow me. Chen's face fell. He hadn't expected Mandala to be so swift in carrying out her plans. What she had mentioned just yesterday, she was already putting into action today. But since Mandala had come personally, he naturally couldn't refuse and could only explain things to 9 Nether. The latter was also surprised when she heard that Mandala was going to personally train Chen. Having been in the great Luo Heaven domain for a while, she knew how hard it was to even get an audience with the domain lord. Mandala rarely paid attention to any of her subordinates, let alone devote time to personally training someone. In the past, people from the great Luo domain had participated in the Dragon Phoenix sky, but the domain lord had never personally involved herself. At most, the 3 sovereigns would provide some resources. Don't try to take advantage and play innocent. Since the domain lord is willing to cultivate you, don't disappoint their goodwill, Mandala said with a gentle reprimand, her beautiful golden eyes shifting to Chen as she noticed his troubled expression. To receive guidance from a super powerhouse at the Earth Supreme level is an immense stroke of fortune, something that countless people would dream of but never obtain. And yet Chen still wore such an expression, it seemed almost absurd. Chen gave a helpless smile. He naturally understood how precious Mandala's guidance was, but he was just a bit unaccustomed to her lofty status. Mandala didn't say much more. With a glance at Chen, she turned and stepped into the air. Seeing this, Chen waved to the others and quickly followed, leaving behind a trail of envious gazes. Whoosh! In the sky above Great Luo Heaven, Mandala lightly stepped forward, and in an instant, she appeared over 1,000 feet away. Behind her, Chen transformed into a streak of light and hurriedly chased after her. No matter how fast he sped up, he could not overtake the petite figure ahead. It seemed that Mandala noticed this and slowed her pace, aligning with Mu Chun so that they flew side by side. As they moved through the sky, several powerful figures from the great Luo heaven domain passed by. Upon seeing the two of them, they quickly bowed and moved aside. Only after the two had gone far did they look at Mu Chen's retreating figure with astonished eyes. They were clearly shocked to see that such a young commander could keep pace with the domain lord of the great Luo domain. "We're heading where?" Mu Chen asked, looking at Mandala. Mandala, her golden eyes fixed ahead, didn't answer his question. Instead, she asked, "Among the young generation of the northern domain, Lu Yan's strength ranks in the top 5. From my estimate, he should currently be at the 4th grade supreme level." At this point, she glanced at Mu Chun and added, "Don't compare Qin Bei's 4th grade supreme to Lu Yan. He only forcibly broke through using the power of pills. If he were to face Lu Yan in a direct confrontation, he wouldn't last 10 rounds. Mu Chen's face grew slightly more serious. He had fought Qin Bei before and knew how troublesome of an opponent he was. Even though he had given his all, he could only barely defeat Qin Bei at the cost of significant injury. Now, Mandala was saying that Qin Bei would be unable to last even 10 rounds against Lu Yan. Although Mu Chun had known that Lu Yan was not an ordinary person from the beginning, he hadn't expected him to be this strong. The young hall master of the Celestial Profound Hall was certainly deserving of his reputation. Right now, if you were to face Lu Yan, your chances of victory are extremely low. Mandala's words didn't give Mu Chen any leeway, but he simply smiled in response. While he wasn't afraid, he wasn't foolish either. After all, he was still just a 2nd grade supreme. His victory over Qin Bei had been due to his great son indestructible body and 9 dragons and 9 elephants art, which, while powerful, couldn't completely bypass the limits of his level. Defeating Lu Yan, who was even stronger, would be unrealistic. The participants of Dragon Phoenix Sky are all the elite among the young generation of the Northern Domain. Their ages surpass yours, which will put you at a disadvantage when facing them, Mandala said coldly. Mu Chen nodded. In such contests, the only thing that mattered was the result, not how spectacular your journey was or how old you were. So, in the next 3 months, you must raise your strength to the 3rd grade supreme level. Otherwise, no matter how many tricks you have, you won't go far in Dragon Phoenix Sky. Mu Chen's lips twitched. He had only recently broken through to the 2nd grade supreme, and now he was expected to break through again in just 3 months? The difficulty of that was extraordinary. However, he also understood that what Mandala said was true. No matter how many techniques one possessed, the foundation of powerful spiritual energy was paramount. Without solid spiritual energy, even with his great son indestructible body, he would only be strong on the outside and weak on the inside, incapable of effective combat. It seems a bit difficult. Mu Chen scratched his head, speaking honestly. With me here, nothing is too difficult. Mandala turned her head, a smile gracing her delicate face. As the two conversed, Mandala's speed gradually slowed. Mu Chen looked up and saw a vast stretch of black mountains ahead. Mandala led him straight toward the most towering of these dark peaks, descending upon it. The moment Mu Chen's feet touched the mountaintop, a surge of scorching heat rushed up from the ground into his body. It felt as though he were stepping onto molten lava. However, rather than harming him, the heat transformed into a thread of spiritual energy, which diffused into his body before being refined and integrated into his meridians. "What is this place?" Mu Chen asked in surprise. Mandala didn't answer. Instead, she walked toward the very center of the mountaintop and stopped. Mu Chen quickly followed, and only then did he notice an enormous crater at the summit. Its shape revealed it to be a volcano. Standing at the edge of the crater, Mu Chen peered down, and his breath hitched. The volcano was incredibly deep, but at the bottom, he could see a sea of crimson magma, rolling and surging with unbearable heat. The scorching temperature radiating from below made it feel as if merely inhaling the air here would set his internal organs ablaze. Mu Chen frowned slightly. This magma was anything but ordinary. As he breathed in, he sensed his spiritual energy heating up in response. Regular magma shouldn't be capable of affecting spiritual energy like this. This volcano was anything but simple. As thoughts raced through his mind, Mandala suddenly grabbed his arm and leaped into the crater. In a blink, they were deep within the volcano. Now merely 1,000 feet from the churning lava, an overwhelming heat wave engulfed them. Mu Chen's skin prickled with sharp pain, prompting him to circulate his spiritual energy for protection. Swish! The moment they appeared, Mu Chen suddenly heard synchronized movement all around. He turned sharply, his pupils contracting. Black platforms jutted out from the surrounding rock walls, each occupied by figures clad in black. At this moment, every single one of them was kneeling on one knee, their gazes filled with reverence. Mu Chen stared at these mysterious figures, shock welling up inside him. He could sense that each one radiated immense spiritual energy fluctuations. Every single one of them had stepped into the supreme stage. They are the Great Luo Heaven Army, my Great Luo Heaven Domain's most elite force, Mandala said indifferently. Mu Chen took a deep breath of the searing air. So this was the Great Luo Heaven Domain's most powerful and secretive army. Their numbers were far fewer than the 9 Nethers Guard, but Mu Chen knew that in a real battle, the mere surge of their battle will alone could annihilate the 9 Nethers Guard in an instant. After all, every single member of the Great Luo Heaven Army was a supreme. A force composed entirely of supreme experts. Facing such an army, even powerful figures like the Heavenly Vulture Emperor and the Spirit Pupil Emperor wouldn't dare to underestimate them. Swish! For figures shot into the air from the black platforms and landed before Mandala. They bowed respectfully and said, "Greetings, Domain Lord." Like the others, these four were dressed in black. Their expressions were deferential, but the spiritual energy fluctuations emanating from their bodies made Mu Chen's heart tremble once more. Each of them had reached the level of a 5th grade supreme. The Great Luo Heaven Domain truly lived up to its reputation as one of the Northern Domain's top forces. The Great Luo Heaven Army has 5 commanders. These are 4 of them. The last one is currently in seclusion, Mandala said to Mu Chen with a smile. Mu Chen clicked his tongue in amazement. He was finally beginning to grasp the sheer depth of a top-tier power's foundation. For the next 3 months, this will be your training ground. Mandala's small face broke into a bright smile as she pointed downward, toward the churning, terrifying magma that even made Mu Chen's heart race. Hearing this, Mu Chen felt his scalp go numb. The crimson magma raged wildly within the volcano, waves of unbearable heat surging forth. Mu Chen stared at the endless sea of magma, feeling his throat involuntarily tighten. Ordinary magma could never reach such terrifying levels of intensity. This Great Luo flame pool is connected to a spiritual fire vein deep beneath the earth, which is why the magma here contains immense spiritual energy. The high temperatures are also a result of the burning spiritual energy, Mandala explained. Upon hearing this, Mu Chen suddenly understood and was immediately struck by awe. So, the magma here burned with vast amounts of spiritual energy. It was no wonder it possessed such astonishing heat. You don't mean you want me to cultivate in the magma, do you? Mu Chen seemed to have figured something out and immediately winced. Mandala's lips curled slightly as she nodded, making Mu Chen feel a chill run down his spine. Even with his current strength as a 2nd grade supreme, if he were to rush into this magma, it would feel like a form of torture. The magma here is infused with spiritual energy, and it has the effect of tempering meridians. If you can refine the magma, the efficiency of absorbing spiritual energy will be several times faster than it would be outside, Mandala said, pointing at the stone platforms where the Great Luo Heaven Army was stationed. Do you see them? They endure the scorching heat here every day in their cultivation, which is why they've become the strongest force in our Great Luo Heaven Domain. Mu Chen looked around, observing the black-clad figures. Despite the oppressive heat causing their faces to flush red and sweat to pour from their bodies, none of them retreated. They sat quietly, as unmoving as rocks. From their eyes, Mu Chen saw no hint of hesitation. To be selected as part of the most mysterious army in the Great Luo Heaven Domain, one would have to possess extraordinary skill and an unyielding character. Clearly, they weren't chosen without reason. Mu Chen nodded in admiration. Such a powerful army, if deployed in the war with the 100 Battles Domain, would undoubtedly sweep through their enemies. However, It was clear that the 100 Battles domain wasn't yet worthy of having the Great Luo Heaven Army mobilized. This was one of the Great Luo Heaven domain's trump cards. Normally, our Great Luo Army cultivates on the stone platforms here. Only the best soldiers can enter the Great Luo Flame Pool to hunt the Spirit Flame Pythons. One of the 4 commanders of the Great Luo Heaven Army, standing nearby, spoke up. This caught Mu Chen's attention, for the voice belonged to a woman. The woman, dressed in black, had a slender and well-proportioned figure with a beautiful face. However, there was a cold, almost icy aura on her cheeks. This chill was different from Tang Bing's. If Tang Bing was cold on the outside but warm on the inside, this woman in front of him was truly cold both inside and out. She is the 3rd commander of the Great Luo Heaven Army, Bing Xun'er, Mandala said with a faint smile. Mu Chen cupped his hands toward the frosty commander. Her strength, if placed in the Great Luo Heaven domain, would be enough to make her a ruler, yet she had chosen to stay in the Great Luo Heaven Army as a commander. Spirit Flame Python? What is that? Mu Chen, quick to catch the unfamiliar term in Bing Xun'er's words, immediately asked. Bing Xun'er gave him a surprised look, then glanced at Mandala. After receiving a slight nod, she explained, the Spirit Flame Python is a special creation of the Great Luo Flame Pool. But to be precise, it's not a true living creature. It's a product born from the extreme fusion of spiritual energy and magma, an entity without intelligence. Bing Xun'er extended her snow-white hand from her sleeve and flicked her fingers. A beam of spiritual energy shot out, crashing into the magma below. Boom! The magma surged in huge waves, and suddenly, a massive magma serpent, about 100 feet long, emerged from beneath the molten sea. It was terrifyingly vicious. Lava dripped off its body, and its blood-red eyes were filled with destruction and fury. The serpent's tail whipped violently, sending a column of magma soaring into the sky, attacking Mu Chen and the others like lightning. Bing Xun'er raised her jade hand, sweeping a spiritual energy whip that instantly shattered the magma pillar. The whip then coiled around the magma serpent, binding it tightly before dragging it out of the magma sea. When the magma serpent was brought near Mu Chen, Bing Xun'er clenched her hand, causing it to explode with a loud roar. Lava sprayed everywhere, and from the explosion, a ball of crimson light flew toward her, floating before Bing Xun'er. Inside the crimson sphere, the magma seemed to flow, but Mu Chen could clearly sense the intense heat and pure spiritual energy contained within. This is Spirit Flame Marrow, Bing Xun'er said, holding the crimson sphere in her hand. Let me give it a try, Bing Xun'er said, flicking her finger. The ball of Spirit Flame Marrow shot toward Mu Chen, who quickly caught it. After a brief hesitation, he swallowed it in one go. As the Spirit Flame Marrow entered his mouth, it felt like magma flowing down his throat. In an instant, Mu Chen's face turned bright red, as if he could smell the scorching, burning stench carried by the magma as it coursed through his veins. He quickly circulated his spiritual energy, wrapping the pure and fiery magma energy with it. Then, he activated the Great Pagoda art, gradually refining the magma energy. This process of refining lasted for a full 10 minutes before Mu Chen slowly opened his eyes. He exhaled a puff of white mist, which immediately ignited upon contact with the air. Such marvelous spirit flame marrow, Mu Chen said, his eyes filled with amazement. After refining it, he could clearly feel his spiritual energy growing, and more importantly, his meridians, which had become sturdier as they absorbed the spirit flame marrow. If he were to cultivate with the supreme spiritual liquid alongside it, the results would be astonishing. Of course it's marvelous, Bing Xun'er said nonchalantly. This spirit flame python is incredibly tough. The one I killed earlier only had a lifespan of 100 years, yet its power was on par with a third-grade supreme. In our Great Luo Heaven Army, not many have the qualifications to enter the Great Luo Flame Pool and capture one. Mu Chen couldn't help but click his tongue in awe. He hadn't expected the Spirit Flame Python to be so formidable, especially after seeing Bing Xun'er handle it so effortlessly. You owe me a Spirit Flame Marrow. Bing Xun'er suddenly fixed her gaze on Mu Chen, her tone serious. I said I was just letting you try. Mu Chen was taken aback for a moment, then chuckled, shaking his head. He hadn't expected this cold, aloof commander to be so direct. Since the Domain Lord has allowed you to come here for cultivation, it's likely so you can enter the Great Luo Flame Pool and hunt spirit flame pythons. However, in our Great Luo Heaven Army, only those at the 3rd grade supreme level or higher are qualified to enter. You, with your 2nd grade supreme strength, are still a long way from being able to do so. Bing Xin looked at Mu Chun, pointing to the stone platforms around them. Her words were blunt, without much politeness. So, if you plan to stay here and cultivate, I suggest you start by practicing on these stone platforms. Capturing a spirit flame python is beyond your current abilities. Many of the Great Luo Heaven Army soldiers standing on the stone platforms also cast amused glances at Mu Chun. They seemed to be familiar with Bing Xion's personality and understood that the young man brought here by the Domain Lord was about to face her unceremonious challenge. Although I am the Domain Lord of the Great Luo Heaven Domain, the authority over the Great Luo Flame Pool is in their hands. If they don't approve, I can't do anything about it, Mandala said with a slight smile, standing nearby. Clearly, she expected Mu Chun to earn his right to train here through his own abilities. Mu Chun, having just faced Bing Xion's blunt refusal, gave a wry smile. He then looked down at the surface of the magma sea, narrowing his eyes slightly. Whoosh! In an instant, his body shot downward. He struck the air with one palm, and a spiritual energy light streaked across, crashing into the surging magma waves. A spirit flame python of similar size to the one Bing Xion had killed before shot out of the magma, charging straight for Mu Chun in midair. The soldiers on the stone platforms looked on in surprise, clearly astonished that Mu Chun had dared to provoke such a violent spirit flame python. Unaware of your own limits, Bing Xion frowned slightly, clearly thinking of Mu Chun's action as an attempt to show off due to not accepting her challenge. Mandala crossed her arms, watching the scene with a faint smile. Boom! Suddenly, under the gaze of everyone, a dazzling golden light erupted from Mu Chun's body. A giant golden figure formed behind him, and its golden hand shot forward, slamming down. A powerful spiritual energy hurricane surged out in all directions. Bang! The golden hand slammed down and caught the spirit flame python in its grasp. Then, with a mighty squeeze, the creature exploded, sending magma shooting into the air. The soldiers of the Great Luo Heaven Army, watching from the stone platforms, all had a slight change in expression, their eyes wide with shock. Clearly, no one had expected this young man with only 2nd grade supreme strength to possess such incredible combat power. Mu Chun stood atop the Great Sun indestructible body. With a flick of his palm, a cluster of spirit flame marrow landed in his hand. He then lifted his gaze to the cold, delicate face of Bing Xion, whose expression showed subtle changes. With a flick of his finger, the spirit flame marrow shot toward her. Commander Bing Xion, it's yours again. Mu Chun stood on the crown of the Great Sun indestructible body. His youthful and handsome face, bathed in the reddish glow of the magma below, seemed to exude an almost hypnotic, heart-stirring power.